On this episode of the Neutral Wisdom podcast, Satanic Warlock Robert Shirley discusses risk versus reward and is joined by Church of Satan Reverend Storm Anderson and Priestess Renee Anderson to discuss their own personal experiences on today's topic. You are listening to the Neutral Wisdom podcast, a podcast dedicated to passing on knowledge and experience from a satanic perspective, hosted by Satanic Warlock Robert Shirley.
Greetings and welcome to the Neutral Wisdom podcast. I'm your host, Satanic Warlock Robert Shirley, and today's episode is a special one. It delves into the idea of risk versus reward. I'll be joined later by Church of Satan Reverend Storm Anderson and Priestess Renee Anderson, who uprooted their lives to move from Salt Lake City, Utah to Poughkeepsie, New York, to start the Witchcraft District Bazaar and Art on You shop. Packing up and leaving everything you know behind to embark on a great adventure is indeed a risk. Think of all the questions that surface whenever we're faced with a risky endeavor. But if you really think about all of the questions that surface, they're really all variants of the same question. What if I fail? Before we dig into that, let's first define what risk is. Oxford Dictionary defines risk as the possibility that something unpleasant or unwelcome will happen. If looking at risk as a verb, it means to act or fail to act in such a way as to bring about the possibility of an unpleasant or unwelcome event, or to incur the chance of unfortunate consequences by engaging in an action. Failure would be defined as the lack of success. So failure is a possible negative consequence of taking risk. Well, how do we mitigate the risks we face? We have to be pragmatic and think things through. We have to come up with a list of possible risks and plan strategies to deal with any possible outcomes, good or bad. The interesting thing to me, though, is that sometimes the thought process does not involve, what if I fail? Sometimes it involves, what if I succeed? Sometimes success in our endeavor might not have a positive outcome for us either. Regardless, we must weigh the risk versus the possible rewards we might gain by taking it. The level of risk we take is determined by our comfort level, our confidence in the endeavor, and the possibility of a positive outcome. I think it would be very rare that one would enter into a definite no-win situation. Well, I wouldn't anyway. For every person who takes a risk and fails, there's one who takes risks and succeeds. Figure out if that risk is worth the possibility of failure against the possibility and benefits you would gain from success. My thoughts on this topic don't really concern a risk as big as those faced by today's guests, but on some level, I think we've all faced the concept of risk versus reward at different stages in our lives. Some risks are huge, some not so much. Some are personal, some involve public perception. I'd like to read an essay about my own experience with this subject titled, Risk versus Reward. Comfort is the enemy, risk is the defense. I have really been putting myself out there as of late. From all of my accomplishments within the Black Guard of the Hellfire Brotherhood to starting my writing journey, which was pretty much a year ago in December 2023, starting this very podcast to finally posting pictures of my gorgeous face on the internet, I find that I've stepped out of the shadows of anonymity into the rather harsh light of public scrutiny. Admittedly, it was pretty easy to write essays and blogs and post them to social media under a pseudonym. It's easy to hide within anonymity when no one can really figure out where the message is coming from. My appearance and bearing were left to your imagination. I could have been anybody. However, as is most often the case, we have to grow in advance. Couldn't simply hide behind the written words forever. To make my brand grow and spread my neutral wisdom, I realized I had to engage on a completely different level. As such, the Neutral Wisdom podcast was born, as well as an increased social media presence. I have to admit, I was feeling pretty nervous before I hit the submit button on that first podcast, or posted those first pictures to social media. As with any new situation, there's always a niggling fear in the back of your mind. What if my voice sucks? What if I'm actually full of it? Will I lose readers or listeners if they know where this neutral wisdom is actually coming from? After I finally made the plunge and began my social journey, it made me sit back and think, why would I, confident, self-aware satanic warlock, be nervous about taking such steps? After all, it's not like I'm not already doing things like this. It all comes down to risk versus reward. I've been taking small risks up to this point. My Black Guard brothers were my safety net on the Devil Salon podcast. Even though I'm part of the podcast panel, I don't have to speak the entire time. My blog was fairly anonymous, but these small risks have yielded great rewards and increased my own confidence. But staying safe does not create growth. Stepping into the unknown can be scary and uncertain. It's natural for us to seek safety and security, but real growth often happens when we challenge ourselves and take risks. Stepping outside of our comfort zones and embracing uncertainty can lead to personal development and a deeper sense of accomplishment. But here's the problem. Our brains hate risk. When faced with situations that involve risk or uncertainty, the brain often triggers feelings of anxiety or fear as a way to protect us from potential harm. We're more likely to avoid taking that risk. This can result in a tendency to stay within familiar and safe boundaries, even if it means missing opportunities for growth and development. Since I had been taking smaller risks up to the point of publishing my podcast, I knew I had to push through and move forward. It still wasn't easy. But what are the risks versus the rewards in my own case? Well, as far as risks, possible failure. Not everybody's going to pick up what you put down. It can be a big speed bump in your forward momentum when you fail at something new. For public perception, well, this is more of a self-esteem issue for me. I think on some level, everyone's concerned with how they're perceived, especially when presenting something they have created. Podcast takes time to write and produce. Will this create another time drain on my schedule? Am I already stretched too thin with everything else I'm doing? Will I end up resenting it if this becomes a thing? These questions might seem silly at the outset, but as a long-range, big-picture thinker, I have to consider any longer-term impacts. And what if people hate it? Pretty self-explanatory, I think. You just never know what any type of reaction is going to be, and you can kill yourself with worry about it. I do find it interesting that all of my risks are personal and introspective. I don't really stand to lose any money since I could simply use my music production equipment for my podcast. But how we see ourselves and live from day to day can be just as important as any monetary amounts we invest. But for these risks, I find there to be ample rewards. For personal growth, I have to challenge myself and try new things. Did it with writing and now even more so with podcasting. I'm better developing my communication skills and style, although talking to a computer screen is a lot different than public speaking, which I'm actually pretty good at. And I find that putting inflection into my reading and speaking is much more effective to communicate my intent. New opportunities. Of course, everything is a sales pitch. As a public speaker, I'm always looking for the opportunity to give presentations and seminars. Hopefully, hearing my voice and presentation style will lead to a speaking gig or two down the road. If nothing else, the podcast is a starting point for introducing myself to potential clients. Increase resilience. I'm out there. There are going to be haters. This is an opportunity for me to deal with adversity and negativity in a different way. Nobody particularly cares for conflict, but we all have to learn to deal with it. In this new medium for me, it presents a new set of challenges. A deeper sense of accomplishment. Hey, how many people can say they decided to do something then actually did it? Warlocks produce rather than pontificate, create rather than crow. Expanded perspective. By interacting with a wider audience, I'll have the opportunity to hear different viewpoints. By having guests, I look forward to conversations and disagreements. The world isn't just about my own perspective. Everybody has their own journey and viewpoint to share. And now here I am in season 2 of the Neutral Wisdom podcast. I've had some amazing guests and great interviews and spread neutral wisdom on a much wider scale than if I had simply stayed in my comfort zone. Maybe you like the podcast, maybe not. Perhaps you'd rather go back to what I sound like in your head than listen to my real voice. However, you might gain more from my work if you can hear how it actually came out of my brain to begin with. Now that I've put my voice to my words and my face to my voice, you are truly getting the whole picture of who Robert Shirley is. While that was a scary thought at the outset, now it is what it is. I took the risk and the rewards are endless. Can you apply the same level of risk and reward to your own life? What have you got to lose? Let's pause here for a break. When we come back, we welcome Church of Satan Reverend Storm Anderson and Priestess Renee Anderson to discuss their own personal experiences with risk versus reward.
You are listening to the Neutral Wisdom Podcast. For comments, questions, or suggestions, email us at neutralwisdom.ca.
Welcome to the Devil's Salon. We are a podcast dedicated to masculinity and the Satanic Gentleman, hosted by the inner sanctum within the Black Guard of the Hellfire Brotherhood. Join us, along with special guests each month, as we discuss men's issues and how to become an exemplary warlock in today's world. Join the movement. Find us on Facebook at The Devil's Salon. Devilish Gentlemen. devilishly good times.
And we are back with the Neutral Wisdom Podcast. I'd like to welcome our special guest for today. These two crazy kids completely uprooted their lives to move from Utah to Poughkeepsie, New York to start a business. He is an extraordinary artist who does all kinds of art and tattoos. She is an entrepreneur and craftsperson who designs and makes a lot of the items in her own shop. Please welcome Church of Satan Reverend Storm Anderson and Priestess Renee Anderson to the podcast. It is so awesome and such a privilege to have you guys here, and a real treat for our audience today because this is the first twofer that I've ever done here. So welcome to you both.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate being here.
Yeah, it's exciting. You've got so much to add to the conversation for today's episode. I'm looking forward to really getting into it. So other than what I said about you in my introduction, can you tell us a little bit about yourselves? And please, either one of you can start. What's your background? Where'd you come from? How did you become a Satanist? How did you two crazy kids meet? What's the story with Storm and Renee?
I'll start with, pardon me, a little bit about myself. I was born in Missouri. My mom moved us to Salt Lake City, Utah when I was 8 years old, and I just essentially lived there until 2020 when we decided to move to Poughkeepsie. I've been a seamstress for the better part of 30 years, self-taught. A lot of the stuff that I do make in the store, it's just things that I'll see it and I'll think, you can probably make something like that. And after a whole lot of trial and error, it ends up in my store. I have 3 kids, 3 grandkids, mom, wife, priestess in the Church of Satan. Like you said, entrepreneur, small business owner. I don't really know what else there is to say. Cat mom.
Yeah.
If you have not met Renee, there is no way you look like you have 3 grandkids, not even close.
Oh, I appreciate that. Our oldest granddaughter is 12.
Thank you so much for inspiring my wife, because Ms. Wiz now has crafting crap all over our dining room. She was so inspired when we went to visit you guys. So
Fantastic.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And as far as maintaining our youth, I can only say it's magic.
Yeah.
It really is.
yeah, no kidding. Well, you're looking like a spring chicken yourself, Storm. What about yourself? Where do you come from?
Thank you. I appreciate that. I was born in northern Montana, right near the Canadian border. Moved around lots. My dad he's been retired for a bit now, but he was a coach and teacher, women's athletics. So that got us moving around a bit. Eventually I ended up in Salt Lake, where I find Renee, and I'll tell you that story in a minute. But otherwise, I have been what I consider a born artist. I have been wanting to create, draw, paint, sculpt, whatever, since I can remember. And so, of course, that ultimately leads to having a career in art. And I've been a full-time artist for, something they were doing like 20-ish years. And together we created Art on You Studios, which was a shop that we co-owned, a tattoo shop on historic Magna, Maine in Magna, Utah. We did it for 11 years.
Almost 11. Yeah, almost 11.
Almost 11 years. And we did a lot of really neat things together that I'm sure we can talk about later in the conversation. Everything from becoming elected officials to having some of the most unique events. Yeah, we ended up here in Poughkeepsie, and she pretty much covered all of the rest as far as parents and grandparents and being here. Now, meeting her, when I moved to Salt Lake City, I got a call from a good buddy of mine who ultimately still remains a very good friend. He said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Probably making all the wrong decisions right now. I'm done with school. And wow, what do you got going on?" And he says, "Why don't you come down here and work for me?" And I said, all right. So I moved to Salt Lake, and I'm using my art background to stripe parking lots. I'm painting yellow lines and red curb and ADA spaces. So it's a little bit of irony, I think, there, but basically the two of us. So what I thought was going to be a crew, it was basically just the two of us most of the time. And so I have to get a side job, and that's going to be at the Olive Garden, and I'm going to be serving and bartending. As a little bit of time goes on and I'm there, I see an interview that's happening with Alex Douillet. The only reason I remember Alex Douillet's full name as the manager is because she was the one that was interviewing this gorgeous blonde that was sitting there. And I kid you not, it was like something you see out of a film. No lie. Like the beams of light, and here's coming on. I thought, whoa. And I was next to Grant, and I remember Grant because he was a fellow artist. We were on break between a double shift, and I'd said, if that gal over there gets hired, I kid you not, I'm asking her on a date. But I remember exactly what she was wearing. I remember the sandals. I remember the white dress. I remember how her hair was done, all of it. She gets hired. and I chase after you. And she keeps telling me no, because she's just coming out of a relationship that was very no bueno. And I pretty much was not going to have any refusal. And so she finally says, all right, I'll go out with you just for a drink. And I must have had the gift of gab, because that Halloween, she was unable to have a babysitter. And I'd said, that's all right. I'm going to go to the Halloween party. It's all the Olive Garden crew. And I took a cell phone with me at the time. It was one of those Nokia kind of block phones that attached to your belt. Little side note, my buddy that was, Chris had also my employer at the time, not just a good friend, but that was my phone that was supposed to be for straight in the parking lots and to otherwise communicate, but it was still pay by the minute. So I ran up a phone bill of hundreds of dollars that night because I have to talk to her and pass the phone around the party so everyone can talk to Renee and see her there. The phone actually goes hot in my hand before it dies. And we were a couple. By that point. And now she's my girlfriend. A year later, I proposed, and she's my fiance. A year after that, on that Halloween of 2003, she became my wife.
It sounds like you guys were working lesser magic on each other from the beginning. And I really like the fact that she made you chase her. That is so cool. And you're persistent enough to not give up either. So I didn't know that about you. I don't think anybody outside or anybody new to this would have any idea. So you might have just given away more than you should have.
That's all right. I think that the takeaway there is persistence pays.
And how did you both come to the organization? Because now you're both leadership in the organization. And I'm just kind of curious as to how you each got started, given that Salt Lake City is in Utah, which is not exactly known for grapes, as our friend Reverend Cardone would call it.
That's true. That is absolutely true.
But that's also kind of a cool, fun story. And Witchcraft District plays a part in it. Renee had encouraged me to become a tattoo artist, and I really kind of hesitated on that. I thought, what, I'm just going to fuck people up if I'm doing that sort of thing. I don't know that I should be doing that. But she said, no, you should do it. And, so that starts a path to me learning, apprenticing, etc. But during that time period, I'm looking at other artists. And of course, I discover Paul Booth, who was already world famous by that point. He had Last Rites Tattoo in New York City. And I see in his store, there's a piece that was in, there was a necklace, and it was a big piece that was a Baphomet. And I thought, what is Baphomet? And it was designed by Warlock Joe Netherworld. I thought, who's Warlock Joe Netherworld? So as I go to Google and I'm looking up at the Baphomet, blah, 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 yada, yada. So I was, Church of Satan. Wow, Church of Satan? What is it? So I look up Joe Netherworld, which of course also leads me to Church of Satan. I thought, you're an art, because I read about his artistry and the things that he was doing at that time. And he's a warlock in the Church of Satan. So, of course, needless to say, I end up at the website and wanting to purchase the book. I read it and I hand it over to her. I said, you need to read this. Oh, my God, the Satanic Bible. All right, yeah. A little bit later, comes back and says, I think we're Satanists. So in a small way, it was because of discovering Joe Netherworld and the Baphomet that led us to the Satanic Bible and becoming Satanists.
And you had that immediate light bulb moment that most of us have, which is really cool. I mean, you read those pages and you find yourself in it and you realize, wow, I'm not by myself. Like, I'm not the weirdo, or I'm not as strange.
That's exactly what I thought.
100%.
Yeah.
One of the things I love about us doing our thing is that we get to express ourselves constantly. And I'm so envious of the both of you for being able to live your reality, live your dreams. It is so cool. I can't draw a sword with a ruler, Storm, so I'm very envious of your art skills. In terms of your shop, can you tell me a little bit more about the Witchcraft District and Bazaar and the Art on You shop? I'm lucky enough to have been there in person, and the shop is absolutely amazing, as my wife and Wallet will attest to. And I can definitely promise that we'll be back there. But if you could just tell us a little bit more about your shop. I know it's kind of on the metaphysical side. And the thing that I find really interesting, and I'm going to just diverge a little bit, but it's kind of part of it, is that as Satanists, I find it so unique that you're both into witchcraft the way that you are. And I just wonder how the two things tie together.
Oh, they absolutely go hand in hand. I don't like to necessarily, I do on a regular basis, but I don't like to necessarily refer to my store as a metaphysical store.
Okay.
I understand that I do have, the same things that other metaphysical stores have, the incense, the herbs, the crystals, the books, all that kind of stuff. But I like to say that my store is different in the way that I carry stuff that would be more old world witchcraft. I've got altar tools and things like that where a lot of other metaphysical stores wouldn't carry them. There's a beautiful store, another one that's in the city of Poughkeepsie, and she's fantastic. Been here for almost 30 years now. Mm-hmm. But she is what I would absolutely consider to be a metaphysical store owner. More gifty, more light. I'll just say, for example, this Friday, she's calling it White Friday. She refers to it as White Friday. We refer to it as the blackest of Black Fridays. Come in and wear the blackest black that you have. So little things like that. I have had people come in and compare the store to the Magical Child in the city. Okay. We never had the pleasure of visiting the store, which is a shame for us. But so I can't say one way or the other, but in having people come in and compare the store to the Magical Child, it's just
wow.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Leaves you kind of speechless. We cater to everybody. We've got stuff in there for Wiccan, stuff for pagan. If you practice Santeria, we've got stuff in there for that practice. We have obviously satanic stuff in there. We have stuff in there for people that just say, I'm an eclectic witch.
Yeah, and then you just have stuff that's kind of very much on the occult side, where it's not specific, but it's very much, the occult sciences. Mm-hmm. You do have that in the areas of the books, and you're able to kind of help produce that, go down roads where people are saying, I'm not really sure where I'm at, and you can help kind of guide them and give them the tools that they need. I think Garrett's a perfect example of that.
Oh yeah.
Where Garrett wouldn't say he practices witchcraft, mm-hmm. but he very much is into the occult, and he does believe in some sort of magic that's in the universe. And so he comes in and he gets supplies from me all the time.
Right.
To work the kind of work that he does in the occult world. And same with Bella.
Yes. Yeah.
She actually, had said when she introduced herself, I'm an occultist.
Right. Yeah.
And so I think it's great that you
we've met a lot of
all these really unique people.
Really interesting people come through.
I love the stuff in there. I'm really into the aesthetics of it. I was never into the witchcraft or the occult side, unlike most Satanists. I didn't start out as a monster fan or a really dark kid, but I always loved the aesthetic of the skulls, the pentagrams, like all of it. Mm-hmm. And the shop is full of it. The other thing that it's full of is Storm's artwork, the book in particular, prints that you have, and the tattoo shop. So being a bit of a tattoo aficionado myself, how's that working for you, being in the same shop as the witchcraft and the occult stuff?
It works perfectly now. When we were leaving Utah, one of the things that I very much want to do as far as tattoo shops, I didn't want to do a tattoo shop anymore. I felt that creatively I was going in a new direction. I don't consider myself to be any longer a part of the tattoo industry. I'm someone who had that experience for many, many years to be in the tattoo industry. And I'm very proud of that. I'm proud to have made that part of my lifestyle, because I remember being told by my mentors that when you came into the industry, you are going to make this your life. You are going to eat, sleep, breathe tattoo. And I did for a lot of years. We went to conventions, and we did the bike rally up in Evanston each year where we tattooed bikers all day long. It was like this marathon thing. And that's what it was. We went out, and all of us were wearing, at that time with Attitude Tattoo, we were wearing Attitude Tattoo gear. We looked almost like a bike club or, somehow, because we were all wearing these Dickie shirts that had patches and the great big logos on the back that all said Attitude Tattoo. And so I embraced that, and it was great. But then things started to kind of evolve, and I felt like I was going in a new direction. And when we were moving out here, I told Renee I wasn't even sure I wanted to even necessarily tattoo anymore. I wanted to just do my own artwork, because we were a walk-in shop. So whatever walks in the door, you're going to kind of take that. I want a clover, and I want to say Irish pride. I want blah, and you just think, okay, and my dad's a fisherman, so I want you to throw in, I want a fish hook in there too. And my kid likes ice cream, so if you could put like a 3-scoop ice cream because he likes to, and you just think this is like a clusterfuck mess, and you want me to somehow turn that into something that, and I thought, I just want to do what I do. And I specialize with black and gray, and I want you to just say, I want a skull. Make one of your awesome skulls for me in your style, and that's what you're going to do. So like if you go to Paul Booth, I believe Paul now, when you sit down with him, you just tell him where to put it, and then he's going to put whatever he's going to put there. You don't even get to tell him a subject matter. You're just going to get what Paul puts on there. But
the greatest kind of work that you get is Let
Yeah.
the artist have their head and just say, okay, I got space here, fill it. And that's when you get the best work.
And you know the styles, and that's why I try to explain to others. I said, if you've seen a style, any artist, name any artist, you see a style that they have. I don't care if you're talking about Salvador Dali, I don't care if you're talking about Walt Disney, Stan Lee, or if it's in the tattoo world, it could be Bob Tyrrell, Paul Booth, any of them, they'll have their own styles. I have my own style, so if you like what you see, then that's what I'll do. Give me a general subject and allow me the creative freedom. And I said, but I wasn't sure because I don't have a name like any of those people do. And she's
Yet.
and that's what it was. So she's encouraging it and saying, then take a space in my store and just do what you do. And the others, tell them that you're not doing color anymore. Tell them that this is your style and that you're not doing, for lack of a better term, tattooy things. And so I thought that I'm not going to do that. I'm going to involve the entire space to look not tattooy at all. So I know when you stepped in there, you probably saw that it does not look like a tattoo shop in any way. The toolbox I was using is now in the basement. It's actually being used as a toolbox. It has a hammers and screwdrivers. So anything that looked very much like a tattoo shop kind of piece of artwork, I kept that, put it somewhere else. So it's getting eBayed now. But otherwise, I wanted stuff that was going to look like what we have a passion for, Halloween and witchcraft, and that's what the space is. And that's why there are things like bones hanging from that beam that goes across. And I wrapped everything in moss and, put up an entire altar for the sigil work that I do in there. And it works perfectly. It's a very symbiotic relationship between what I'm doing in that space and what she's doing out in the store. And I love it. I love it more than I think I thought I would.
So what I'm gathering from the context of this conversation is you are not going to be doing my full color lion rose with a pocket watch tattoo next time I come to Poughkeepsie. Damn it! I need to go somewhere else. Jeez.
I can absolutely do something fun with a lion. In fact, I don't know if you saw, I posted a little sketch of a lion that had some kind of branchy antlers. And so we figure out something with a lion.
Don't tempt me with a good time, buddy. So since this episode today is all about risk, and you both said that you were both from Salt Lake City, again, not a very grapey kind of a place. What made you decide to just uproot yourselves from your comfortable life there in Utah, and you're with your family and your familiar surroundings, and you guys just up and moved to Poughkeepsie, knowing that the witchcraft district, of course, is there. But there's so much risk involved with everything that you guys decided to do. So how did you deal with that risk and decide to just take the plunge and just go?
Well, there were a lot of nights of drinking. I'm kidding. No, I'm serious. But there was a lot of stuff that led up to it. The first time we came to Poughkeepsie was in 2016, and it was for a major event. Actually, let me back up. In 2013, we went to Salem for our 10-year wedding anniversary and fell in love with the East Coast. It's just a whole different vibe. The people are completely different. There's something just magical about the East Coast. And it was something that I had never experienced before in my life. So 2016, we're getting ready to go to Conclave. We come to Poughkeepsie, and we're just mesmerized by the whole idea of being here and by meeting all these other members and people that we looked up to, and respected. And took a little bit of time, and we did some driving around in the city of Poughkeepsie, and we're looking at all the beautiful Victorian houses and the structures, and the churches are so gorgeous, and we just kind of fell in love with it. And we thought, yeah, I could see us retiring in a place like this, right? And so that was always the long-term goal. We come back to Poughkeepsie in 2018 for a visit and to just kind of really check the place out. I was working at the post office at the time, so I went to the local post office and, was talking to them about potentially transferring. And, we went to a local tattoo shop.
Yeah.
And talked to them about potentially, getting a spot there, and just kind of did a little bit more research. You fast forward and 2020 happens. We had the day after St. Patrick's Day, we had a 5.7 earthquake in Magna, and our home and business were less than 2 miles apart. And it was right on top of the epicenter. And the ground just shook violently, and it shook and it shook, and it wouldn't stop. And we had hundreds of aftershocks, and it was one of the most frightening experiences I've ever had to live through.
Yeah.
I mean,
terrifying.
Yeah. We were actually asleep when it had happened. And I just remember we were sitting up in bed and we were screaming and we didn't know what to do and shit's falling off the walls. And, I said, get under a doorway. Because of course, that's what they teach you in elementary school. They don't do that now. Now you get under a table. We didn't know that. So we ran in under the doorway.
Holding each other.
Yeah, and we're standing there and we're just screaming. And it kind of subsides a little and we go running down the stairs, broken glass everywhere from picture frames. And we go running out the front door. And I just remember it was March and I was in a nightgown and I was barefooted and it was freezing outside. And we were kind of like at the top of a hill as far as the neighborhood's concerned. And there are houses behind us. And I remember turning because I heard a guy outside yell, "Holy shit!" And I thought, yeah, you said it, buddy.
Yeah.
So that was kind of like the beginning of it, And then, of course, April 1st, we're shut down for COVID. Well, we were shut down anyway because of the earthquake. It had caused minor cosmetic damage to the building that we had rented for the tattoo shop. It was over 100 years old. So, the county is coming out and assessing everything and dragging their feet and saying, I don't know if we can let you work. I don't know if we can let you work, and we're fixing cracks above door frames and windows and house and straightening lamps, on the side of the house. And it was just chaotic and it was a mess. And we had all of our artists messaging us constantly. What are we doing about booth rent? What are we doing about getting back to work? And we're just saying, I don't know. I don't know. I had to shut my book.
Nobody knew anything.
Nobody knew anything.
Anywhere.
This hadn't happened in, I don't know.
100 years.
Yeah. So I shut my phone completely off. He goes on a downward spiral and it became this whole huge problem.
And we had the raccoon water.
Oh, we had the raccoon water. That's true. Yeah. There are 2 tanks that serve Magna and they found a dead raccoon in one of the tanks.
During that same time period. And she hears it on the news because where our bedroom was, we had the TV going and she's in the tub. Yeah, so we found out, I said, no, I think that's the other tank. And we found out it was. So she was all right. But at first, oh my God, it's on me.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it was kind of like, I think something had just snapped in us. And we thought, you know what? I think I want to just start over button. I want to light this match and throw it over my shoulder. I'm burning the bridge. I need something new.
Well, there are other factors for us leaving, too. The air was a major factor.
The air was,
In the Salt Lake Valley, it's very similar to the way it is in Denver, how it's a valley. And it will trap the air. So you have all the industry. Now you have, 2 million or so people in the Salt Lake Valley. It was about that when we were there. This time of year right now, the cold creates an inversion. So it pushes all of your industry air down. So there are times you can't even see across your own neighborhood. It's so thick. The other seasons, they literally have an ozone season. They have a burn season where all the smoke is trapped in there. The Great Salt Lake's drying up. So you have dust, which is, of course, silica, which is microscopic glass pieces that cover your lungs. So there's all sorts of things. And for someone who was never born with asthma, who was once a competitive swimmer, I get asthma. I'm on 2 inhalers as we're moving across the country. I'm now down to 1 preventative and I'm healing. I don't really cough much anymore. And,
it gave our cat asthma.
Yeah, it gave our cat asthma.
Wow.
Yeah.
But recently, speaking to a nurse that I was tattooing, she said, oh, yeah, the lungs do heal. She says, if you're not smoking or anything, give yourself 7 years and you'll be completely healed again. So I thought, well, there it is. That's why I'm not having to use an inhaler because I got myself away from it. We went back to Sundance in January and I got sick again because the inversion was still heavy.
So it was a good move for you mentally. It was a good move for you physically. And that story is terrifying because the ground is not supposed to move. Living where I do, I can't even imagine it. We have problems with floods and mosquitoes, but the ground doesn't move. So I'm not exactly sure how I would handle that.
It's an act of nature. And when nature, when Mother Nature decides to throw one at you, it's a complete sense of loss of control. I can control the people outside. Mm-hmm. If someone decides to do some breaking and entering, I want to say I feel horrible for that person because they're not going to leave intact. But, that's something I can control. I can't control Mother Nature. If Mother Nature decides she's going to throw a typhoon, a tsunami, whatever blizzard, she's going to do that. And there's nothing you can do about it.
We gathered the kids, the oldest and middle. Youngest was working and couldn't leave, but we get the other kids over there, grandkids, and tried to make a breakfast. And every 15 minutes, 20 minutes, we were interrupted by the ground shaking. And so we'd all run outside. And then we'd come back in when it was done and we'd try and eat. None of us could eat. And the ground would start shaking again and we'd run back outside. And there's this big 6-foot guy with his arms around all of us, with his arms around all of us. And I remember our daughter-in-law, Erica, looked over and she said, "Oh my God, your house." And I thought, I know, I can't even look at it.
Yeah, it was swaying.
Yeah.
Well, then moving to Poughkeepsie was a good move. One of the things that we noticed when we were there is that the witchcraft district where you are is a very, very tight-knit community. There are so many great people there, and everybody seems to be very supportive. Do you think that this helped you with your decision to move to Poughkeepsie specifically and start the business or start the new business? And how important a factor is support from not only where you're going to, but from where you're leaving? You know, you're saying to your family, well, we're gone. See you. We're going halfway across the country. So we know that you had the support coming to Poughkeepsie, but what about leaving Salt Lake?
It was all I ever knew. You know, I was there for the better part of 40 years. My kids were there. My grandkids were there. And it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I thought that I was mentally ready and prepared. And our eldest daughter and her wife and our granddaughter took 2 weeks off of work and they helped us move. So we had this fun little caravan. It was actually a really fun move, but they were with us. And I remember everything was loaded up and I'm sitting in the car waiting to leave. And I see Samantha, my daughter, walk in front of me to her car and she was sobbing. And I lost it for a solid half a week. It was fun because we had these little walkie-talkies, each one of us in the vehicle. And so we would talk to each other on it. And, you know, so that we would say, okay, I need to pull off for, you know, a drink or whatever. And so I'm crying and I'm crying and I'm crying. And Erica gets on the walkie-talkie and says, Samantha said, no matter what it takes, we're going to move out there too. And they haven't yet. It's been 4 years. I'm still holding them to it. Our youngest is here with us. Our youngest followed about a year after, and they're doing extremely well, has an amazing career, lives very close to us. But we're really hoping for the other three to follow us as well. They're a lesbian couple in Utah, you know.
So you definitely had the support from the family, even though it was difficult. But
Right.
Coming into the community of the witchcraft district must have been absolutely amazing.
It was.
We didn't want to leave. Like, it was the best part of our trip. And Manhattan was a blast, but we didn't want to leave. We were just having such a good time.
Yeah.
I would add that we still had support and still do to this day. We still have support in Utah as we were leaving. Bede and Julie were hugely supportive. Mike and Sarah.
Yeah.
James and Peggy, you know, they were all very, you know, and the list, you know, there's a good list of individuals that were hugely supportive, but we just knew that our experience there needed to go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned we were elected officials. I was president of the Chamber of Commerce for 2 years. I was president. Before that, I was secretary, and you were president of the town council.
Mm-hmm.
So we worked laterally on a number of things. We spearheaded the Halloween and Summer Festival under the Art on You Studios banner, which in its final year that we did it had 30,000 attendees over the course of the day. The Inkathon, we had this annual trick-or-treating event. We did all sorts of really neat things for the community. And there's still a very special place in my heart for both of them. I think for Magna and for Utah and for lots of people there. But I think that lots of people get to a point in their lives where they think this is not where I want to be. I have friends that I grew up with in Pocatello, Idaho, that were born and raised there, are still there now in their early 50s, and they have no intention of leaving. And
that's good for them.
Yeah, we've meant the same with when it came to Salt Lake. We've come here and people say, I was born and raised in Poughkeepsie and I'll never leave, and kids are here, grandkids are here. That's great for them. But for some of us, we want to move and we want to do something else, and we see ourselves somewhere else and we resonate somewhere else. And so we brought the experience here.
Mm-hmm. But I absolutely could not have done it without the support of the locals around here,
or the support of our kids. I mean, that experience of moving out here was. Emma made it so I could actually drive that truck.
I know. Yeah.
You know, I have my granddaughter next to me, and she's just this little tyke. You know, and she's got her headsets, and she's got her candy and her chips, and she's got. I have her do the walkie-talkie to kind of get it going. I'm white knuckling this thing in this. Great big
26-foot Penske.
26-foot Penske.
Pulling the car.
Yeah, that's driving basically like an 18-wheeler. So not nearly as big, but still has the same functions. And, you know, when we go to truck stops, I'm parking where all the other trucks are parking. Because you have to. I mean, it's a 26-foot rig. I just remember thinking, I've never done anything like this. I don't know if I can do this on a freeway. But I'm looking at her and I'm thinking, of course I can do this. I'm the biggest individual that you know in your entire life. And I'm always the toughest. And I'm always the one that you come to be protected. Hey, Emma, why don't you get on that walkie-talkie, talk the moms, and so it just kind of gets the confidence. Okay, Grandpa. And so she's, getting on, and I thought, and that's who I have to be right now. And everything kind of relaxed. I'm forever grateful that we had those individuals with us to make it. And then it got to be just sort of a routine over those 4 days driving across the country where you hear the walkie-talkie. All right, up front, we're going to go ahead and we're going to merge left to switch lanes and do the pass. Here we go. And she would be
in the back.
Yeah, you were in the back behind me, and Samantha and Erica were in the car in front of me. And so they'd move over. Oh, I should also note that it wasn't just a 26-foot Penske. I was also had my car, it was my car at the time, got a trailer behind the Penske that I'm pulling. So we'd see the two cars go over, and then they'd say, all right, big guy, come on over. And I just kind of come on over in between the two cars. So they're making space the whole way so we could make it through across the country. And Erica was taking turns with me. So if I needed a little break, she would come and drive the truck in between.
Well, I know who's helping me move next time. Let me tell you.
Well, I can get you Erica's number.
Well, thank you. I'm sure she'd appreciate that. I had a really weird question for you guys here. Seeing that you're living your dreams, you're living your art, you're doing exactly what you want to do. You up and moved halfway across the country. What if you had failed? And did you have a backup plan, or had you made up your minds like, we're not going to fail, we're going to succeed no matter what?
I'll say today that I am the queen of the backup plan. It's always, in the back of my mind. But in moving here, that was, I don't know about you, but for me, it was never even anything that I had considered, because I thought, we were successful in Magna, Utah. Why can't we be successful somewhere else?
Yeah, we were incredibly successful, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, we really were. And I don't know, I had this wild vision in my head, too, of, knowing the witchcraft district. Yeah, it's the neighborhood, but it's a mindset that's all of Poughkeepsie. And so the entire area of Poughkeepsie now resonates with this idea of being the witchcraft district, much like when you go to Salem, it's the Witch City. Or when you go to New York, it's the Big Apple. I had this wild idea. It's going to be Witchcraft District Bazaar with Art on You being featured inside. I mean, I don't know why I was I think I was envisioning something more like what you see in Salem, because that's such a huge inspiration. So I was envisioning this sort of store that was just taken right out of Salem and then plopped here in Poughkeepsie. And we were just going to open it up like within the month after we kind of get settled at the house. But that's not at all what happened.
Well, we get here, and the first thing we have to do is a 2-week quarantine. We're just kind of stuck in this little tiny house surrounded by boxes and all kinds of 70s walls and
the paneling.
Yeah. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. Anytime we left, anytime we had to go anywhere, everybody was completely face masked. Nobody was out on the roads. Nobody was going anywhere. I remember looking at him and saying, I don't know that it's really a good idea for us to open right now in the middle of this, because we got here on August 4th, 2020. So, there was still no vaccine. People were still freaking out. And so I thought, well, let's get the house in order and, we'll pick up a little job or something while we're waiting. And we ended up becoming contact tracers for about 9 months. That allowed us to work from home, which was great. The first winter in Poughkeepsie, New York, we got to work from home. It was convenient. And then we just started kind of formulating a plan as to what we were going to do when time came to find a place and start moving ahead.
So failure was never an option. You were going to succeed no matter what. And I think the thing that I'm taking away is that in order to get there, you have to be flexible and kind of roll with what you're handed, right?
Right.
In order to succeed, you have to be able to be flexible enough to move with the situations.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Unless you're already in a very well-to-do position. Yeah, absolutely. That's what you're going to have to do, is you're going to have to kind of roll with what comes your way. But keep your eye on the prize. And I know that part of that prize was getting a Victorian house.
Yeah.
That was kind of a rough go for 3 years.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But
yeah.
And then last year, wow, which that's a whole other story. But in short, it was a very painstaking, very mentally challenging, emotionally challenging situation. But we won. We were able to make it through 3.5 months of a process after finding the place, which it was great. The high priestess had sent a message saying, there's a house that's, I say for all intents and purposes around the corner. It's actually 2 streets over, but it's less than a 5-minute walk.
Yeah.
Yeah. Much less than a 5-minute walk. And we said, yeah, we saw it. We'll go look at it. But we kind of came into it thinking, I don't know. It wasn't really what we were looking for. So we always want something with a turret on it. And yeah, we thought it was actually be just a little bit bigger than this. But I kid you not, we walked in and it was as though the house was starting to wake up because we walked into it and was showing us things that we didn't think we were going to see. And we go into the backyard and that's when we saw the tree. Yggdrasil, which we named after the tree god, the Norse tree god, and very fitting because Yggdrasil is gargantuan. Unless you're actually standing beneath it, it's difficult to tell you just how big Yggdrasil is. I saw the yard, which technically is a double lot because there used to be another house there at one point in history, and that was absorbed into what we took over, and the house just spoke to us. And before I know it, we're telling Steve, we'd like to make an offer right now. I think he was a little surprised too. I don't think he saw that coming, but we thought, no, we're going to turn it into the Halloween house that we always wanted to make. And her name is Lagertha, after the character in Vikings.
I've had that experience too. You walk in and the house speaks to you and you go, this is it. I don't even need to see the rest of it. I get the gut feeling when I walked in the door, this is it, and it's an amazing experience to have. Okay, so your leadership in our organization, I knew of you, but I didn't know you. So I had the opportunity to meet you and get to know you. And when I found out what you had done, how you had moved, I said, this is an absolutely amazing story. And people need to hear about this because I think a lot of people want to do what you've done, but they just can't, or they won't, or they're scared to do it. So what advice would you guys have for somebody in a situation like yours, like someone who might be thinking about making that big move or starting that new business, or like yourselves, even both, but they're feeling scared or risk averse? Is there something they can do to get over that fear and just accept the risk and the possible consequences or even the rewards? Is there a strategy that you could recommend for them?
After we moved here, we reconnected with a friend that we had in Salt Lake City, and she came out for a visit. She had recently split from her husband. We were friends with both of them, when we lived there, and it was a very terrible split for her. But she has this newfound lease on life now. Everything that we were saying, everything that we were talking about, everything that we were saying we wanted to do, our youngest was with us, and everything that they were saying they wanted to do, her response was always the same. You should do it. Why not? And I always keep that in the back of my mind because I think, why not? People do that kind of thing all the time. My mom moved us from St. Louis, Missouri to Salt Lake City. And then when she got sick of Salt Lake City, she moved to California. When she got tired of that, she moved to Nevada. And then when she got tired of that, she ended up back in St. Louis. Why not? It is scary. I'm not going to lie. Yeah. I mean, the selling of the house there and then immediately having to drive across the country because COVID. So we're not going to get on a plane. Took 2 weeks, came across, the country to find the in-betweener house that we had. And it was like, there was no way that we could go back without a house because there were no stipulations on the sale of the old house. It was just, I'm going to sell you this house for this amount of money, and I'm going to be out July 31st. And that was the end of it. So we drive across the country and we're like, we are not leaving Poughkeepsie without a house. And so we found a house, we put an offer on it. It was very emotional when the offer was accepted. It was just from there, we just went back and we packed everything up and we sold everything off. As far as the business is concerned, we gave kids, living room sets and curio cabinets and all kinds of stuff.
Oh my God. And when we first get here, this is a fun little side note. We first get here and we actually questioned what we got ourselves into, especially that tiny little Cape Cod. And we have no room for everything. We're trying to stuff stuff in closets and in the basement, just stacked almost to the ceiling actually it was in places stacked to the ceiling.
It was.
And we don't know what to do with all this stuff. And like college kids that are starting all over because we're sitting on a mattress on the floor in the bedroom with a TV just propped up, against a dresser. And we're watching The Money Pinch. He says, I feel like Tom Hanks right now. What did we do? And I had said, I don't know, but I'll take another round. And so, we're just sitting there having drinks and getting a little loaded, thinking, what did we just do? Because we're sleeping basically on the floor and had to work our way back again.
I was almost 50 years old and I was sleeping on a mattress on the floor.
Yeah. But you know
That's
what?
how you keep your youth. That's how you do it.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think that was part of the process. And don't be scared. It is scary, but to the best of your ability, just do it. Otherwise, you're going to be at that final moment in your life and say,
what if?
What if I had done that? I should have done that. I should have done this. I should have taken off. My great uncle was known for just taking off and doing wild, crazy things. And a lot of times he'd come out, yeah, it didn't work out, so I'm going to try something else now. And I kept those stories in my mind. And if you think about people in general, we've been doing this for thousands of years. At some point in history, people started moving in one direction, discovering other people. Vikings decided to just kind of go all over and decide, I want to go see what's over there. I have no idea. I'm going to get on the ship and sail over there and see what's over there. And then at some point, there was a famous Viking, Leif Erikson, who decides, I'm going to sail all the way across out here. There's some sea monsters and stuff. I don't care. And he sails all the way across. And then you have other Europeans that start sailing all the way across. At some point, people went across the Bering Strait. People have been moving forever. You talk about the United States. There are people at some point that they were told, if you go across to the west, you can claim whatever land you want. You just need to get on that wagon train and go claim property because we need to start making more states out there. And they did. And I can't imagine that, how scary that must have been as you're dumping stuff out of these Conestoga wagons going across the country, people getting sick, livestock dying, but they did it. In my own family tree, I can honestly say that I can't remember how many greats, but a great-great-great-grandmother, Missouri Filson, who was the first woman in the state of Montana. And so that must have been terrifying. I'm the only woman in the state of Montana.
Yeah,
but that happened. Do it. I think a lot of people think that they can't because they live this world now that everything's on a screen and they don't think about what's outside. And what if I do just take off? What if I do go to Hollywood and actually do become the next Johnny Depp? What if I do?
You never know until you try it.
You don't know until you decide to get out there and do it. And we still have a couple of goals that are a part of the bigger goal. We had 3 large ones in mind, and 2 of those are now met. One of them was getting the business going. Mm-hmm. The other one was getting the house that we're now sitting in. We have another goal that we want to achieve, and I believe we'll do it.
Yeah, I do.
Absolutely.
Too. Yeah.
I love the strategy that you employed, either consciously or unconsciously, and I think it's valuable advice. You didn't give yourselves a chance to fail because you didn't give yourself a back door. You sold everything in Salt Lake City and said, well, this is us now. Here we go. Failure was not an option. You had nothing to go back to. And I think that's a really good way for somebody to kind of cement that, if I could, use my own phrase, to go ever forward. You can't go backwards, right? And it's kind of one of those things, you don't give yourself the opportunity to fail because you close all of those doors, which I think is very, very valuable advice. Lastly, I'd love to hear about your websites, your projects, what you've got in the pipe, what you're doing. How can we get a tattoo from Storm? How can we order from you, Renee? Go ahead. Give me the 3-minute elevator pitch.
Okay, so I'll tell you, you can visit my website. It's witchcraftdistrict.com. You can do online ordering. If you are out of the country and you want to purchase from me, I'm telling you, my system is not international shipping friendly. So what you can do is make your order, choose in-store pickup, and then contact me and I will get you the absolute best shipping rate. And if you want to get on the email list, go to my website and a box will pop up and you can just type in your email address and you'll be on my email list. And I spam people like once a month with emails. I should do it more often. I'm so busy. It's just, I'm kind of a one-woman show here. So I try.
For my stuff, you can visit artonyou.com. That's where I have all of my background on there, my experience, my process. If you do want to get tattoo work from me, that's on there. If you want to get one of my magically charged sigils and how that works, that's all on there. As far as the sigils, I can do that on an original like canvas watercolor paper, and I can still charge that in ritual. So it is magically charged, and then send you with instructions, whatnot, and send that out to people. So I'm available to commission that way. And I have been taking some commissions. In fact, Frankie Melted Chapsticks Hollywood had reached out, and he's going to have me do his new album cover. So Fantastic. That's something that's in the works. I have some other ideas that I don't really want to put too much out there yet because they haven't really even started to be put on paper or on digital or anything format yet, but they're up in the noodle. One of the things I do want to do that I'm kind of revealing here to her also is I think in the future, I want to have a website that's under my name and not under what was Storm Artworks at one point. So that I'm being like other artists and creators are out there. So like Stephen King, it's stephenking.com. So I think I will have something that's under my name.com in the future. And so that's where I'm going to start doing some new creations under that site down the road. I can't say exactly when.
When do you guys sleep? Holy cow. Just always on the move, always going.
We are. Yeah, we are. Better than boredom, right?
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. And thank you for sharing your story. Like I say, I think there's a lot that anybody thinking about going and moving, making these big steps can take away from it. And definitely check out the websites, check out Renee's shop, check out Storm's artwork. And thank you guys again so much for being here today.
And we're on socials, everything.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Socials, everything. We're on Instagram, Facebook. We have a TikTok.
I have a Blue Sky now. So we've got it already. So check us out there.
Yeah.
We definitely will. Thanks a lot, you guys. We'll talk to you soon.
Yes. Thank you for having us on. Thank you so much.
Cheers. And that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the Neutral Wisdom Podcast. I'd like to thank all of you for listening, and a huge thank you to Storm and Renee Anderson for being here today. Be sure to check out the shop in person in Poughkeepsie, New York, or online at witchcraftdistrict.com. Please drop a like or a comment down below. For questions or comments, you can email me directly at information@neutralwisdom.ca. You can listen to us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all the regular places. Check me out on Facebook under Robert Shirley. Check out Instagram at neutral_wisdom. And be sure to visit the website at neutralwisdom.ca. Until next time, ever forward.
You have been listening to the Neutral Wisdom Podcast. For more information, email us at information.neutralwisdom.ca, Facebook under Robert Shirley, or Instagram at neutral_wisdom. Also check out our website at neutralwisdom.ca. Program copyrighted 2025. Devilish Gentleman Enterprises.